Centuries ago, deep in South America, lost civilizations flourished within the Amazon rainforest. European explorers and neighboring communities noted a careful construction to settlements. However, even the closest neighbors wouldn't understand the village's brilliant designs, not without 21st century technology. When such technology finally came into play, the findings shocked experts. How did people so long ago accomplish such an impossible feat? Ancient villages' strange formation leads scientists to an astonishing discovery. Close to the Brazilian section of the Amazon, settlements of ancient indigenous tribes have become lost in the changing landscape. But a 2020 study showed how modern technology has been put to work to uncover what the human eye can't see. An archaeological team, confident that they could find what so many others had missed, took to the skies over the rainforest with Lidar. Short for light detection and ranging, the equipment had lasers that scanned the land. Nothing of the kind had been attempted before. Could Lidar pick up on traces of extinct communities in the Amazon? Much of what occurred upon the land before colonization took over has been unknown. From the pieces of history that survived, historians agreed on a few common facts. So much more information was needed. Friar Gaspar de Carvajal, a Dominican missionary, chronicled what he found upon exploring the New World. He wrote about a developed network of roads he had seen. Only more recently have his writings been deemed reliable, especially based on some of his claims. Though dedicated to locating and converting indigenous tribes, Carvajal nearly brought about their extinction. He didn't realize it, but Carvajal transported diseases from the old world that the tribes had never dealt with before, killing many. Still, he wasn't the last outsider to visit. By the 1700s, another explorer made his own declaration of what he found within the Amazonian land. Colonel Antonio Pires de Campos stated he witnessed large populations within the area. Of course, other outsiders who'd traveled through had no such experience. During the years between then and now, historians couldn't find any evidence for this hidden jungle civilization. Try as they might, the rainforest was simply too dense to survey. With no tangible proof other than the explorers' writings, many experts thought little of these theories. Enter Lidar. The laser technology became a game changer in overturning assumptions and seeing the unseen. When its pulsed lasers are aimed at a targeted area, they return to a sensor. In doing so, they bring back accurate measurements of the land and a 3D map. Not only has the method become a reliable one, but a safer one. Experts don't have to navigate the tough terrain of overgrowth and wild animals. More importantly, the destruction and disturbance of the land is no longer needed to read into its past. The resulting Lidar images revealed that Carvajal and Pires de Campos had not lied about their findings. Nor had they embellished what they had seen. The two had been correct all along. There was definitive proof of these Amazonian settlements, and their layout was astounding. A total of 35 villages had been scanned. They dated back between the 14th century and the 18th century. While the range was broad, it was the settlement's design that truly was awe-inspiring. These were far more advanced than groupings of huts in the rainforest. Mound villages, shaped like circles and rectangles, were discovered, all being about 3 miles apart. As their names suggested, the villages took the form of pilings that surrounded a center plaza. They formed some interesting patterns too. Among the roads that crossed through the villages were two primary routes. They stretched out, both 20 feet wide, and formed into high banks. It was these larger roads that reached other settlements. In each and every area pictured, the intricate network of roads sprouted out like a clock hand. Or maybe they were something else altogether. The archaeological team published their findings in Journal of Computer Applications in Archaeology. The team stated that the roads in the images were like the rays of the sun, which gives them the common name of sóis, the Portuguese word for suns. In fact, all of the structures seemed to mirror some celestial body. Could the old Amazonian tribes have looked far up to the skies for inspiration on their settlements? It's simply a theory currently, but one that holds up well due to the layout. These peoples could have designed their homes to resemble the constellations due to their way of life. The maps revealed a history of Amazonian tribes that had a strong soil engineering culture. What is most essential for crops to thrive? The power of the sun that looms overhead. It was literally and figuratively the center of their world. Many civilizations throughout South America had a special devotion to the sun and the cosmos. Over along the western edge of South America, the Incan Empire worshipped the sun as a deity. The sun was necessary for warmth and life that it provided. When a total solar eclipse plunged the world into darkness, the Incas performed rituals of fasting and sacrifices to better please their deity and return the sun to them. With the lighter equipment at their ready, it's very possible the archaeologist's theory will become fact and uncover further settlements of the past. These constellation-based Amazonian villages could unlock secrets for former civilizations throughout Mesoamerica, even the well-researched Inca. Set at almost 8,000 feet above sea level, Machu Picchu remained hidden for centuries before being rediscovered by the Western world. And even though it's now a major tourist attraction, there is much about the grand city that we still don't understand. All the while, though, experts have been attempting to unearth Machu Picchu's secrets, and they've had some very surprising results. One such specialist is geologist Rualdo Meneghet, who has been studying Machu Picchu for years in a bid to unravel the mystery of its construction. At times, then, he conducted field work at dizzyingly high altitudes, taking measurements from the ancient city itself. On other occasions, however, he pored over data in a laboratory thousands of miles away from the Andean peaks. Finally, in September 2019, Meneghet was ready to reveal the fruits of his labor to his peers. So, at an annual gathering of geologists, he outlined his theories about how Machu Picchu had been built and why. And now these remarkable findings are inspiring others to look at the Inca Empire in a whole new light. The story of the Incas began back in the 12th century at a small hamlet nestled in the Andes Mountains. There, a tribe of farmers lived and worked in the region known as Cusco, which lies roughly 11,000 feet above sea level. And, ultimately, these agriculturalists would band together to create their own city-state. Then, in 1438, the leader known as Pachacutec Inca Yupanqui came to power. And under his direction, the kingdom of Cusco began a ruthless expansion into the surrounding area. Historians believe, in fact, that in just a few generations the Incan Empire grew to incorporate much of what is now South America. At its peak, the Inca civilization spanned 2,500 miles across vast swathes of Ecuador, Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia and Chile. And while Cusco remained the empire's most important city, other grand settlements began springing up across the region. Then, in around 1450 or so, work began on another outpost that was located around 50 miles northwest of the Inca's capital. According to archaeologists, this new city, dubbed Machu Picchu, was conceived as a compound for Pachacutec and his inner circle. And the estate not only featured a lavish palace complete with its own toilet facilities and garden, but it was also equipped with multiple temples and other structures. In fact, approximately 750 people are thought to have lived in the city at its peak. After Pachacutec died, his son Tupac took over, and Machu Picchu continued to thrive and grow. Change was coming, though, and the glory days of this city in the mountains were not to last. In 1526, the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro and his men arrived on the fringes of the Inca Empire. Spurred on by dreams of great riches, the conquistadors pushed deeper and deeper into the empire with each passing year. In the meantime, the Incas themselves descended into civil war. And with its people weakened by turmoil and European diseases, this mighty civilization ultimately fell, with cities such as Machu Picchu left abandoned as a consequence. Then, for almost 400 years, Machu Picchu remained half forgotten in the mountains, its existence known only to a handful of local tribes. In 1911, however, the American adventurer Hiram Bingham arrived in the region now known as Peru. Apparently, he was originally searching for Vilcabamba, a fabled lost city that is believed to be the last refuge of the Incas. While Bingham was in Peru, moreover, a local man guided him to the overgrown ruins of Machu Picchu, which the American initially believed to be the mysterious Vilcabamba. And even though this wasn't quite the case, Machu Picchu was nevertheless launched to international fame. From that moment on, tourists eager to see the relics of a lost civilization began to trickle in. Today, Machu Picchu is considered Peru's top tourist destination, attracting almost 1.5 million visitors a year. And although some of these sightseers make the lengthy hike in from Cusco, many arrive via rail at the city's purpose-built station. There is also talk of constructing an airport at the site, a plan that would change the face of the ruins for good. But while the future of Machu Picchu looks uncertain, there are many who are still attempting to unravel its past. And despite the estate's popularity with tourists, the Inca mountain city has done an impressive job at keeping its secrets over the years, with the construction of the remote citadel perhaps being one of the most enduring mysteries. Today, it's believed that the Incas used a dry stone technique to build the city's remarkable stone walls. Essentially, this means that the rocks were cut and fitted together without utilizing mortar. But how did these ancient people carry out such a detailed and challenging feat? And why did they choose to do it in such an isolated spot? Well, Meneghet, a researcher at Brazil's Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, sought to answer those questions. He noted, too, that the Incas appeared to have made a habit of constructing their cities in isolated and inaccessible locations. And as a geologist, he believed that the reason for this choice may lie somewhere below the ground. It seemed to me that no civilization could be established in the Andes without knowing the rocks and mountains of the region, Meneghet explained to Newsweek in September 2019. It could not be built on a whim. It is part of a practice of building settlements in high-rocky places. But what guides this practice? What knowledge of the rocks and mountains did builders need to know to succeed in building cities under these conditions? According to Meneghet, this area had also not been explored by any previous research, leading him to set out to conduct his own study of the geology surrounding Machu Picchu. Using a combination of satellite photos and measurements taken at the site, he began to map the tectonic faults that crisscross the region. Long before the Incas and Machu Picchu emerged, though, the Andes Mountains had been created by a great geological upheaval. Millions of years ago, the two sections of Earth's crust known as the Nazca Plate and the South American Plate collided. And as the Nazca Plate was pushed beneath the South American Plate, a high ridge of rock formed. In an attempt to understand the landscape surrounding Machu Picchu, then, Meneghet conducted 4 separate field trips to the region. When he wasn't up in the mountains, meanwhile, he pored over data in his university laboratory. And along with satellite imagery, Meneghet used previous geological studies of the area to inform his research. What's more, Meneghet was impressively thorough with his work. At each stage of the research, I presented the results to Peruvian researchers from various fields of knowledge: geology, archaeology, anthropology, architecture, urbanism, landscape ecology, and epistemology and regions of Peru, so as to assure me of the correctness of data. I also evaluate the scope and importance of my findings for Andean culture researchers, he explained to Newsweek. Eventually, though, Meneghet's research led him to a singular, startling conclusion. It seemed that Machu Picchu had been constructed in a spot that most modern builders would steadfastly avoid. Right on top of a series of tectonic faults. In fact, an entire network of cracks in the Earth's crust seemingly ran beneath the city. And according to Meneghet, these faults vary in size. Indeed, while some of these breaks are little more than fissures, others stretch considerable distances beneath the mountains, with one particularly impressive example clocking in at more than 100 miles in length. A number of the faults also travel from northwest to southeast, while others run from northeast to southwest. In fact, there's so much geological activity here that 5 separate faults converge beneath Machu Picchu, creating an ominous X to mark the spot. And Meneghet believes that this is unlikely to be a coincidence. Instead, he has argued that the tumultuous terrain is integral to the structure of the city itself. While studying Machu Picchu, UC, Meneghet observed that all of its main structures were built in alignment with the faults beneath the city. The layout clearly reflects the fracture matrix underlying the site, he explained in a press release from the Geological Society of America. And, shockingly, the mountain stronghold of the Incas is not the only settlement to have been built in such a manner. Yes, Meneghet discovered that a number of additional Inca cities also appear to be aligned along geological features. The ruins of Ollantaytambo, which lie less than 20 miles from Machu Picchu, are also believed to be located at the intersection of several tectonic faults. And 50 miles to the east at Pisac, a similar underlying structure can be found. Meneghet even claims that the Inca capital of Cusco was once constructed in alignment with the geological faults beneath the city. But why would these ancient people have chosen to build their settlements in such a way? Could it be the result of an age-old superstition, or perhaps even a choice with ritualistic connotations? Well, Meneghet believes that Inca culture actually had nothing to do with it. On September 23, 2019, the researcher presented his findings at the annual meeting of the Geological Society of America in Phoenix, Arizona. And during his talk, the researcher put forward a novel explanation. The Incas actually used the faults to lighten the physical load of building cities. Yes, according to Meneghet, the Incas specifically sought out areas of geological turmoil as locations for their cities. Since the stoneworkers who built the famously perfect walls were experts at their craft, the specialist claims, they knew that the fractured rocks found above tectonic faults would provide the perfect building material. Where faults intersect, the rocks are even more fractured, Meneghet told Newsweek. Therefore, they are places that have more loose blocks on the surface, and these are also places where the rocks can be easily removed to build terraces and buildings. That wasn't the only advantage to constructing cities on these sites, however. Meneghet has gone on to explain that the fractured rock was also naturally set into geometric shapes, such as hexagons and triangles, meaning the materials should have slotted together more smoothly. And if the pieces of stone were not the correct shape, then their fragile nature would have made it easier to cut them down. The intense fracturing there predisposed the rocks to break along these same planes of weakness, which greatly reduced the energy needed to carve them, Meneghet explained in the press release. In fact, in the geologist's opinion, the construction of Machu Picchu would have been impossible without these conditions. However, Machu Picchu's position on top of several tectonic faults didn't just make the workload easier. According to Meneghet, this specific geology also funneled melted ice and precipitation towards the city, which in turn provided a ready source of clean water to the community, in spite of the inaccessible mountain location. The Andean world is inhospitable, Meneghet told Newsweek. Here, human life is possible only in a few places where water drips through fractures. The Incas knew to follow this criterion, which allowed them to establish networks of settlements in this kind of oasis of habitability, provided by the faults and fractures. Owing to the water that came from the mountains, then, the Incas didn't need to build in the low valleys, thus reducing the risk of danger from rockfall and flooding. And these unlikely but surprisingly sustainable cities were so successful that in total they were able to support a population of some 10 million people. But Meneghet believes that the fractured rock beneath Machu Picchu had yet another purpose. While heavy rain was sometimes a problem even this high up in the Andes, the geology of the region could have provided natural drainage and so helped to protect the site from flooding. In fact, this feature may well have prevented the city from falling further into ruin after it was abandoned. About two-thirds of the effort to build the sanctuary involved constructing subsurface drainage, Meneghet explained in the press release. The pre-existing fractures aided this process and help account for its remarkable preservation. Machu Picchu clearly shows us that the Inca civilization was an empire of fractured rocks. Fascinatingly, Meneghet also revealed that the Incas had their own way of describing the tectonic activity on which their cities were built. There is a Quechua word for large fractures, he told Newsweek. As the great Peruvian writer José María Arguedas said, the Incas called the fractures that crossed the mountains quijlo. Geologists call them faults. But does this mean that the people who built Machu Picchu had an incredibly advanced comprehension of geology for the time? Well, while they may not have known the cause of tectonic faults, Meneghet believes that they could definitely spot them. The Incas knew how to recognize intensely fractured zones and knew that they extended over long stretches, he continued. Amazingly, then, the Incas' knowledge of faults therefore enabled them to build structures that were to last for more than 550 years. But just as researchers such as Meneghet are beginning to understand the secrets of Machu Picchu, the ruins are more at risk than ever. If plans to construct an airport just a few miles away are carried out, you see, the hub would bring dangerous numbers of visitors to the already crowded site. And although archaeologists are petitioning against the development, the future of the ancient city continues to hang in the balance for now. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.